Hey everybody, this is Perch. Dan DiDio is somebody that fairly early on in the channel had been asked to take off from old DC, and there was a lot of excitement, I would say, at that time. Dan DiDio, for a variety of reasons, both fair and unfair, had been kind of pegged for where DC was going wrong. Some of it was I think his statements around certain characters he liked, which were fan favorites like Wally West. Some were kind of the whiplash of the New 52 and some what had happened there, and then, how Rebirth was positioned. And Rebirth really was kind of identified, if you will, or at least portrayed as, us kind of, we went wrong, and so we're going to try and do something that is more for the fans. And DiDio was seen as, perceived, whether it's true or not, as kicking and screaming into that initiative, that he didn't want to go, and he liked what he was doing, kind of wanted to double down in a direction that was very Marvel Now like. Some of that's fair, and some of that, as we've learned, I think, since that time, is not fair. I think that he became the fall guy for a number of questionable decisions, from Daniel Cherry to other things that he actually had nothing to do with. But anyway, this letter writer thinks all in all, people were way too hard on Dan DiDio. So let's see what it says. It says what's interesting is there's a typo in the subject of the email. So when I first read this, it says Justice Foe Dan DiDio, but it was intended as Justice for Dan DiDio. But I kind of like the original read, Justice Foe Dan DiDio. He is a foe of justice. Anyway. For what it's worth, by the way, before we get into all this, I don't have a great liking or disliking for DiDio. And that's not a middle of the road opinion. It means that, in my interactions with him, I think he was, fairly arrogant in some cases. And that was definitely a turnoff. It felt at times like he was trying to, adopt or inherit the kind of Marvel executive way of dealing with fans, which is, dismissive, I think, maybe the nicest word I can use, and so I think that's that's been my takeaway of interactions I've had with DiDio, and so it's hard to say like, oh boy, this is an awesome guy, because he has been a pain in the ass to a number of different people, and he didn't exactly engender a lot of love and support from people outside the office. But that said, I also recognize that a lot of the things that people bitched at him for were convenient excuses to cover up their own failings. And I think from a business perspective, he became the poster child of a lot of dumb shit that was of his own doing. And there was a lot of, like any office, there's some decent politics that were going on there. And I think, some people worked very hard to make DiDio the scapegoat for their own kind of manipulations, some other bullshit that went wrong. And so I'm always sympathetic to that. So that's by way of background. So let's get into this mail. It says, hello, Perch. Can we get some appreciation for Dan DiDio, even if it's just a little? Because when he was editor-in-chief, there was actual ideas. New Age of Heroes, New 52, Rebirth, and even though it was a blunder, Future State. All of these projects had problems, but at least they had new, fresh ideas latent within them, like Silencer or Wonder Girl or even John Kent, even Sideways. Remember Sideways. These are ideas that people really liked at the time until they were bastardized or abandoned. I think the biggest problem in comics is stagnation. Everyone at the top, middle, and bottom, even the indies, are too afraid to do something revolutionary like Wildstorm. Hell, something like 90s New Warriors scares the shit out of any editor today. If innovation drives growth, quadrupling down on spiders and bats for a decade is going to make the company stagnant, frozen in time while the rest of the world moves on. Heck, I'd even welcome them going back to some of those abandoned ideas like Silencer or the Terrifics. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not a bad idea, but why not, instead of the Ultimate Avengers being the real ones, why not let it be Iron Lad, Patriot Wiccan, and Hulkling, or do an ultimate version of the Inhumans or something really new? Just a thought, keep well. All right, so there's kind of two things in this mail. One, the idea of stagnation, and I do agree that, playing it safe. And that's what a lot of the Spider spinoffs are, and the Batman spinoffs, and the fact that you see a lot of this stuff. I mean, hell, Absolute Power, which DC just announced is coming out here in, I don't know, sometime in the summer. Even that event is very much like, oh, government control has finally had enough of superheroes cracking down. How many times have we gotten this storyline in comics? Honestly, like, I was talking to a comic writer who's like, yeah, it's something new and fresh for DC. No, it's not. It's not new and fresh for comics. It's not even new and fresh for DC. We've seen this before. The idea of government agency going to do something. I mean, hell, to a lesser extent, that is Tom King's current story in Wonder Woman right now. Like, simultaneous with this event, that's what's going on. And I mean, Civil War had a lot of aspects of this. We've seen, the whole Dark Reign thing that flowed out of it. I mean, we've seen this, villains do things that are, live in a fascist state, kind of that kind of stuff. It's not a new idea. And going back into the well over and over and over again has diminishing returns. And we're clearly seeing those inside of comics. There's definite diminishing returns. So I think that's a problem. And I think that, going to, I mean, like, there's new Spider-Verse stories, and this time they're apparently promising that this is going to be the last Spider-Verse story or the ultimate Spider, and no one believes that. Like, you would be a complete sucker to believe that this time is the final Spider-Verse. We're finally going to clear it out and move on to something new. Just like we're going to clear out the Venom multiverse stuff or the symbiotes run amok stuff. Or, Batman, his family is not sure if they trust him because he's using, seem a little dodgy. And I mean, there is a sameness to comics. And I think that, that's a problem over time. By the way, the solution to this is definitely not, hey, in that case, let's just throw all the old stuff, swap out the character panels. I mean, I'm always fascinated by people who say, we're tired of the same old stuff. And that's why we've decided to do, Luke Fox or Jace Fox as Batman. And you don't like a black Batman, you're racist. You get into that conversation. And I find it a little fascinating that, it's hard to bring up, or people want to argue with you when you do, the fact that, but it's still another Batman character. It's still Batman. Or, you say, we're tired of the same old status quo. We want to do new ideas, stop clinging on to the past. Yeah, except what is Batman? It's a different dude inside the Batman suit. I don't think you've achieved new, fresh, and different like you might think. So anyway, I think all that's true. As far as Dan DiDio goes, I guess it cuts both ways. Yes, he did allow for a lot of those new ideas, and I was, you can't argue with that. But several of those new ideas were not that new. They were, they were retreads. I mean, you could argue that the New 52 was by and large a lot of greatest hits type stuff. Yes, there were new characters and new versions of all that stuff, kind of new and different. But in many cases, they used the same storytelling ideas, the same kind of art teams, the same general thrust as a lot of stuff that had happened previously. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, by the way. I mean, in terms of creative teams and how imprints go, it's fine. We did get some good stuff out of the New 52. It's kind of like I said earlier. I think Dan DiDio has been demonized for a bunch of stuff that people within the office did. I think some of the, you could argue it this way. Like, for example, I've heard this discussed, the, Tom King throwing a fit and getting Mark Doyle off the book and saying that, he needed a different editor because he didn't like what his editor was doing, and then bragging about the fact that he was able to get an editor off a book because he was a big enough name to do it. That has been tagged to Dan DiDio, that DiDio kind of let that stuff go on inside of his office. And there's truth to that, right? I mean, as a leader, you can't allow kind of chaos to just, run amok inside your office. And so there's some truth to that. but it also overlooks kind of the bad behavior in the first place, that, trying to get somebody you don't like off a book is playing politics, and they were definitely played there, and then bragging about it, and then subsequently saying, well, I didn't have anything to do with it, to cover your own ass. You can put a lot of that on DiDio for not having strong leadership at that point to keep his people in line. But at the same time, is that really fair? And doesn't that let the person who actually did the bad behavior off the hook? I think it does. So, like I said, I think there's a bunch of different pieces here. I do think DiDio does not deserve the some of the criticism he gets, and particularly the stuff that is clearly other people were responsible for. But as a leader, you do tend to get pegged with things that are quote unquote not your fault. But you're the leader. The responsibility stops with you. So anyway, a little bit of love for Dan DiDio. All right, fascinated to hear the comments on this one. What do you guys think? Dan DiDio, tortured hero, unsung, unfairly persecuted, or a true asshole? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.